This video was created solely for educational purposes and is completely neutral in nature. It is the full version of the recording of the incident in which the T-90M Proryv tank was attacked. The previously released video turned out to be incomplete, and now we can see the entire picture and understand what really happened. It turned out that not just one T-90M was attacked, but several tanks at once. In this video we will carefully examine all the details. So, attention to the screen. Here it is, the very same T-90M. The tank entered the village and began moving through the streets. On one of the streets, it stopped and started to turn around. At that moment, FPV drones had already appeared in the air and began circling over the target. The tank's panoramic sight surveyed the entire area, after which the vehicle moved back along the street. The spotter was carefully guiding the tank, and at that moment the vehicle was hit with cluster munitions. For the T-90M, this type of weapon does not pose a serious threat. It may only cause minor damage to external equipment. The tank continued moving. For some reason, the assault infantry entered the village on foot, without the support of multipurpose towing vehicles MTLB, infantry fighting vehicles, or armored personnel carriers. And it was at that moment that the drones began their attack. The first strike was delivered by an FPV drone to the area of the gun mantlet, hitting the barrel. The tank realized that the drones would not let it go, and at full speed it began to leave the village. At high speed, the vehicle moved toward the infantry entering the village. But soon the tank was caught by a second drone, which struck the engine compartment. As shown in the first video, the engine was damaged but did not completely stall. The tank kept moving. Then another drone strike followed, which disabled the fire control system. After this, the tank experienced a critical error, and the turret began to rotate uncontrollably. As I mentioned in the first video, this is an old flaw of the vehicle that has never been fixed. At that moment, the engine stalled and the tank came to a stop. The computer continued to rotate the turret chaotically, while the infantry kept moving further into the village. The engine compartment began to smoke, the commander's panoramic sight returned to its standard position, and at that moment the tank finally died. The soldiers continued to move into the village. The crew made sure that there were no drones nearby and then abandoned the vehicle. Apparently, the drones were still circling above the tank. The tank crew opened fire on them. A group of soldiers met the crew. This was not captured on camera, but the tank started being finished off. Judging by the amount of smoke and dust, it could have been artillery fire. The group entered the village, the spotter marked their shelter, and artillery accurately struck the indicated location. The fate of the soldiers remains unknown. Then a second T-90M entered the village. The artillery continued firing as the tank moved down the street. When suddenly it was hit by a drone. The strike hit the front, but there was no penetration. Shortly after, another drone caught up with the vehicle and, following textbook tactics, hit the engine compartment. The engine started smoking and the tank began to slow down. It seemed like the end, but surprisingly the engine kept running. The vehicle started rolling backward. With great difficulty, the tank turned around and moved in the opposite direction. The engine was heavily smoking and barely propelled the machine forward. Apparently, the damage was significant. The tank requested urgent support. If it had remained inside the village, it would have faced certain destruction. At full speed, a third T-90M Proryv rushed to the rescue. By some miracle, the second tank managed to move under its own power and drove past the first one that had already been disabled. However, it then missed the road and drove straight into a field, which most likely had been mined. This indicated a failure in the control system. After standing still for a short while, the vehicle moved forward again, but it was clearly disoriented. The third tank entered the village while the artillery continued shelling. At that time, the second tank was trying to get back onto the road. The third tank realized that the artillery was firing on a lead, predicting its movement, so it suddenly stopped and began to turn around. At that very moment, a shell exploded right in its path. If the vehicle had continued moving forward, it would have taken a direct hit. The artillery also tried to finish off the second tank but missed. The shell landed about 10 meters from the right side. In the end, both vehicles managed to withdraw under their own power. The result: one vehicle was lost, the second was critically damaged, and the third was hit by shrapnel but most likely remained operational. That was the assault on the village. What kind of tactic this was, ordinary people like us will never know. But we still have the right to our own versions and comments, which I, as always, look forward to reading under the video. That's all for now. See you next time.